Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. The U.S. has extended its restrictions on non-essential travel along the borders with Canada and Mexico. We will explain why and for how long. Healthcare was front and center as federal party leaders hit the campaign trail. And we hear from a current Lethbridge City Councillor about his platform and why he decided to seek the mayoral chair in the Windy City.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. The U.S. has once again extended its restrictions on non-essential travel and land and ferry border crossings with Canada and Mexico, which were set to expire on Saturday. On the campaign trail today, Conservative leader Erin O'Toole says more rapid testing could be the answer to getting the border reopened. The northern and southern U.S. borders will remain closed to most travelers until at least September the 21st. The Department of Homeland Security says the measures aimed at minimizing the spread of COVID-19, including the Delta variant. Federal party leaders hit the campaign trail and are making health care promises. Conservative leader Erin O'Toole says his party will offer support to the health of the LGBTQ2+ community. Liberal leader Justin Trudeau vows improvements to long-term care, and NDP leader Jagmeet Singh took shots at Trudeau's record on health care, saying he upheld previous Conservative cuts.
We all agree that as a country, we need to do better by our seniors. So to support provinces and territories, we'll invest $9 billion to continue addressing the shortfalls in Canada's long-term care sector. So through investments and work with provinces and territories, we're committed to raising the minimum wage for personal support workers across the country to at least $25 an hour.
We know that here in Alberta, it's been very difficult for people and very difficult for healthcare workers. We're seeing cut after cut that is driving healthcare workers out of the province. We are seeing people that are worried if they're not going to be able to get the care that they need. These cuts at the provincial level are only made worse because for years and years, federal governments have been cutting healthcare as well. The Conservatives cut healthcare, and then Trudeau kept in those same cuts. Those cuts at the federal level from Justin Trudeau and those cuts from Jason Kenney are making it so it's so difficult for these workers.
Michelle Rempel-Garner has been our lead on health issues throughout this pandemic. We've been holding the government to account on slow pace on approval of rapid tests, on vaccines. And I want members of the LGBTQ community to know if they want something looked at, if they're advocating for an issue, as Michelle has, as I have, as other members of our caucus have, we want to make sure that a federal government is responsive to the needs of all Canadians in all communities. It's also why we've been holding Mr. Trudeau to account for his broken promise, now over 5 years, to gay men with respect to the unfair, the discriminatory blood ban.
An Alberta woman is alive after doctors at the Foothills Medical Centre in Calgary saved her life. Physicians used a new device to remove a deadly blood clot from her lungs. Calgarian Brenda Crowell developed the clots after testing positive for COVID-19. Officials say she was considered dead for 30 minutes before doctors brought her back to life.
I was starting to finally feel better, and I woke up May 6th and I couldn't catch my breath. I had a hard time catching my breath and being able to breathe. And I was in the bathroom. My husband came in and he said, "Are you okay?" Took one look at me and went, "No, you're not." Phoned 911. And so I ended up going to the hospital and staying there for 27 days.
So Brenda is a really nice story in that we were able to save her life and do great things. Unfortunately, she had COVID-19 and then shortly after that developed some what we would call venous thromboembolic disease. And that's a grab bag of a medical term that basically means it's blood clots that form in the deep veins of the legs or the arms, or possibly can form in the blood vessels in the lungs. And when Brenda was doing so unwell, the PERT team was activated, and then the decision was made for her to have the procedure done with this new device called the Indigo Cat 12.
The Alberta municipal election is coming up on October the 18th. Current Lethbridge City Councillor Blaine Hagan is gunning for the mayor's chair. Hagan says he has a plan to help address the doctor shortage here in our city.
I've started to create a special advisory committee that's comprised of several doctors and leading medical professionals and stakeholders in the community that are going to help me to develop a comprehensive plan for attracting and retaining doctors and other medical professionals here to the community.
Mayoral candidate Blaine Hagan will also address the controversy surrounding where he's receiving funding during his campaign. That Q&A is coming up after business news. A lawsuit has been filed against the Alberta government alleging its rules governing supervised drug use sites will have life and death consequences. Leading the charge are the nonprofit groups the Lethbridge Overdose Prevention Society and Moms Stop the Harm.
Requirements is going to be that people using supervised consumption sites have to produce a personal health number. First of all, we see this as a barrier to people going into a supervised consumption site to get care. The people that use these sites, a number of these people have already been stigmatized and marginalized by our society. Nobody seems to know what the numbers are going to be used for. What are they going to be tracking? And so we see this as an unjust move.
Advocate Petra Schultz says the province's new requirements for clients of drug use sites to give identification will turn many away, increasing the risk of an overdose. The lawsuit comes after the UCP launched new regulations for site operators of drug use sites to receive funding. Masks will become mandatory when students return to school this fall within the Calgary Catholic School District. It says masks will be mandated for all students from kindergarten through grade 12. The school board says the decision will be reevaluated in the coming months and as guidance around the use of masks changes. The move from the Catholic School District comes as the Calgary Board of Education also made masks mandatory for the beginning of the school year. The Holy Spirit Catholic School Division in Lethbridge also released its back-to-school reentry plan. The 4 guiding principles for the division are the safety of students and staff comes first, student learning will continue, resources continue to flow to schools, and school authorities have flexibility to do what is best for their community. To help the spread of COVID-19, the division says it will also promote hand hygiene, staying home if you're sick, maintaining ventilation in schools, regular cleaning and disinfecting, and masks will be mandatory on school buses. As for now, masks will not be mandatory for the division. Students head back to the classroom on September the 1st. Students from the Lethbridge College Aquaculture Centre of Excellence are catching live sturgeon in the Lethbridge area. As Micah Quinn explains now, the team is doing this to better understand viruses that are affecting the fish.
Sturgeon fish are considered endangered by the Committee on the Status of Endangered Wildlife in Canada. The herpes virus has been found in these fish, but the information is hard to assess due to not having much data on the types of viruses in the wildlife population. That's where the Aquaculture Centre of Excellence comes in, as the project is catching sturgeon and gathering tissue samples from their fins to send to Fisheries and Oceans Canada for testing.
We would turn it over onto its back and we would unhook the hook. We would slide our hand kind of down its belly towards the cloaca, and if milt or eggs came out, we would collect a sample of that. As for the tissue sampling, we would flip the sturgeon back over. We would take the left pectoral fin and we would have a little metal punch, put the fin on a board, put the punch on the fin, and take just a small circular sample and then transport that into the tube.
The Aquaculture Centre of Excellence wants to raise sturgeon in the facility because partners are interested in using the fish in aquaponics. Aquaponics is where fish, plants, and microorganisms are grown together in a soilless environment.
And so we've done aquaponics for quite a while with a variety of species of fish, but we haven't used sturgeon, but it would be an ideal species. So we started investigating, well, we should get some sturgeon in so we can do aquaponics with it, so we can educate ourselves on the species first.
Kira Sawatsky is another student that joined forces with ACE to grab the fish. Sawatsky says this was her first research job.
Being able to work with some really high-end scientists and biologists, it has been a huge learning curve, and it's been really, really interesting, and it's helped me definitely hone in what I would like to do for my future.
The research project is expected to catch and sample 180 sturgeon fish from areas all across southern Alberta, and it will run until the end of August. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
For the first time in 6 years, the Lethbridge Bulls are heading to the league championship after beating out the Sylvan Lake Gulls on Wednesday. As Carson Marsouk reports, the All-Canadian team is looking forward to the Alberta rivalry.
In the span of 2 games, the Lethbridge Bulls successfully beat the Sylvan Lake Gulls 2-0 to advance to the league championship, set to take place Friday night at Spitz Stadium against the Edmonton Prospects in Game 1 of the best-of-3 final. After losing 6 straight games ahead of playoffs, head coach Chance Wheatley says the main message among the players is to flip the switch and compete at a higher level.
I think we're a really resilient group. Even if we're down, we're gonna battle and find a way to get back into ball games and win.
Following the losing streak that included 4 lopsided losses to the same Sylvan Lake Gulls team, the Bulls finished off a 2-0 sweep Wednesday night at Spitz Stadium thanks to a walk-off single from Ty Penner that snapped a 2-2 tie and earned the home team a 3-2 win. During the regular season, the Bulls have gone 7-1 against the Prospects, and center fielder Josh Kabiyama says they have been eyeing up the championship since the start.
Obviously, we're confident in our team. We've seen our ability to play. Found a way to get wins when we need it, so that's all that matters.
With nerves running high, right fielder Carlin Dick says he's treating it as just another game to not get overwhelmed.
Being warm up, staying energetic, and having fun with the boys like we've been playing together all year. It's just another baseball game. Let's go win another baseball game.
Both the coaching staff and players say it wouldn't be possible without the energy of the fans.
It's been awesome, actually. We've got pretty good turnouts most of the year. When you got a crowd behind you, you don't have to create so much energy on the bench.
Following tonight's game, both teams will head up to Edmonton for Game 2 on Saturday, and if necessary, Game 3 will be back at Spitz Stadium on Sunday. For Bridge City News, I'm Carson Marsouk.
As some evacuation orders have been lifted during a busy wildfire season, a BC wildfire operations manager says crews are facing fatigue that could jeopardize their safety. Todd Nesman says officials are seeing more slips, trips, and falls as firefighters are overworked and tired. He says wildfire service officials are closely monitoring the health and safety of their firefighters. Officials say the White Rock Lake wildfire continues to burn out of control, meaning evacuation orders will remain in place. Saskatchewan is expanding its COVID-19 vaccination requirements for children, allowing some 11-year-olds to get a COVID-19 vaccine. The province says those born in 2009 are immediately eligible. Doses previously available to only those 12 and older are being administered at pop-ups, participating pharmacies, and school-based clinics. A new report from Manitoba's Advocate for Children and Youth says substance abuse, mental health issues, poverty, and violence top the list of challenges young people are facing. Close to 80% of youth who participated identified the need for more mental health and addiction services in Manitoba. They also want more community-based recreation activities and improved access to affordable housing and public transportation. The Advocate is an independent office of the Manitoba Legislature that supports and advises children, youth, and young adults on their rights and services that should be made available to them. Residents of New England are bracing for their first direct hit by a hurricane in 30 years. Boats have been hauled out of the water and other precautions are being taken as Tropical Storm Henri barreled toward the southern New England coast.
We're also activating up to 1,000 members of the National Guard. You do always come when we call, and we really appreciate that. And they'll be ready to assist with high water rescue, debris clearing, and public safety support should it be necessary. The storm could knock out power for somewhere between 100,000 and 300,000 residents based on the current estimates. So we're also working with utilities and others to stage crews around the Commonwealth in the areas that have been the softest spots in previous storms. And we're also making Camp Edwards available to house thousands of utility workers on the Cape so that they can act fast to restore power when the winds die down.
The United Nations has reiterated its commitment to stay and deliver aid to millions of people in Afghanistan since the takeover by the Taliban.
The United Nations is with you and committed to stay and deliver to help advance peace, opportunity, and human rights for all. First of all, I'm not asking for the UN to manage the airport. I think that the present situation is extremely fluid and we need to be careful in advancing with any proposal for which we have not the capacity to deliver.
So you're saying you don't see a role for the UN in running the airport, is that correct?
I don't think the UN is asking, and I don't think we have the capacity to run an airport. We can cooperate, obviously, with all the parties if our presence is considered useful, but to think the UN can run the airport in the present circumstances, knowing what our presence is on the ground, is, of course, I think, not realistic.
Meanwhile, many Afghans took to the streets waving their country's national flag, defying the Taliban takeover. There are reports as well that the Taliban is also going house to house, searching for opponents and their families, deepening fears that Afghanistan's new rulers are planning revenge. The terror group assured that the rights of women will be respected and that the Taliban will be positively different from their brutal reign from 1996 to 2001. But with thousands of people still trying to flee the capital on board evacuation flights, the intelligence report for the UN confirmed the fears of many. The Trudeau Liberals say Canada no longer requires passports or COVID-19 negative tests for people boarding flights out of Kabul, Afghanistan. Officials say it's part of the government's efforts to accelerate processing the families of interpreters and others who supported Canada's mission in Afghanistan. Canada now has two of the biggest aircraft flying back and forth from Kabul, bringing in refugees. Christian charity Release International has issued an urgent call to pray for the underground church in Afghanistan as the persecution of Christians in the region is set to rise now that the Taliban has returned to power.
As the Taliban tightens their grip on Afghanistan, Christian charity Release International warns attacks on Christians are likely to rise across the region. One church leader there said Christians were living in great fear for their lives. Release International's Andrew Boyd has more.
The church is hidden, the church is underground, the church is at risk. And what we need to be doing is praying for those Christians in Afghanistan who have either fled or are trying to flee. And you can be sure that there will be some who are trying to do that at the moment, or who find it impossible to flee because the Christians are often poor. They don't have the resources to do that. We also need to pray that the underground house fellowships that have been established in Afghanistan will be able to continue. We know that the Christians there are faithful. We know that they're courageous because it's a church that's lived underground now for years. They're a church that is ready to face persecution, and we need to stand with them in that.
And Release International partners are providing radio broadcast and follow-up to train new believers to help them face this ongoing persecution. Peter Wooding for the Global News Alliance.
It was on this day that U.S. cruise missiles hit Afghanistan and Sudan after American embassies were bombed in Africa. The Soviet Union invaded Czechoslovakia, and singer Robert Plant was born. This is Today in History for August the 20th.
August 20th, 1998. American cruise missiles pound alleged al-Qaeda training camps in Afghanistan and a pharmaceutical plant in Sudan. The attacks are a retaliatory strike after the deadly bombings of two U.S. embassies in East Africa just weeks earlier. President Bill Clinton.
There will be no sanctuary for terrorists. We will defend our people, our interests, and our values.
1968. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union and its Warsaw Pact allies in Eastern Europe invade Czechoslovakia. The invasion brutally crushes the Prague Spring reforms by Czech communist leaders to allow greater political freedom. 1977. NASA launches Voyager 2, first of two unmanned American space probes to travel to the outer solar system and beyond. 1942. Singer-songwriter Isaac Hayes is born in Covington, Tennessee. He's best known for the theme from Shaft, and in more recent years, the voice of Chef on TV's South Park. And 1948. Singer Robert Plant, former frontman of the rock group Led Zeppelin, is born in West Bromwich, England. Today in History, August 20th. Camille Bohannon, The Associated Press.
It has been more than 2 years since Canada played for a Women's World Hockey Championship due to pandemic cancellations and postponements. Well, that's all about to change. Canada's women will host the tournament in Calgary less than 6 months after Beijing's Winter Olympics.
We're getting used to on the team just adapting to whatever comes at us. So when we heard that, we're going to have a quarantine, we're going to have this type of situation for the World Championships, I think we're just taking it in stride. And honestly, I know it sounds like that cookie cutter answer, but we're honestly just so excited to compete. I don't expect it to be a lower level than any past World Championships. I mean, these are the top players in the world. And, you know, while you may not have seen the work that was going on behind the scenes, I guarantee you every team has been training like crazy for this moment for the past season.
Well, hopefully the Canadian women can take it all and win the World Hockey Championship. Well, we had light showers off and on in our region today, and that should continue into the weekend. A full look at the weather picture is coming up. You know, a number of farmers I've been chatting with say they're very thankful for the rain, and why not? We've had quite a bit of rain over the last few days here. There should be more showers developing tonight across much of southwestern Alberta and a low near 6. Expect more rain on Saturday with a high of 18. The moisture should taper off, and we should see a high of 23 degrees on Sunday. Mainly cloudy and 16 degrees for Monday. Sun mixed with cloud and a high of 20 degrees on Tuesday. Wednesday mainly sunny with the mercury increasing to 26. 26 degrees as well for Thursday. Checking the almanac, the average high for this time of year is 25 and an average low of 10. The highest temperature in the state was recorded back in 1939 at 33 degrees, and the record low was +1 in 1986. Sunrise was at 6:29, sunset at 8:40. Looking at tomorrow's national forecast now, it should be mainly cloudy and 23 in Victoria, BC. Sun mixed with cloud and a high of 22 for Vancouver. Just a few clouds and 22 degrees as well for Edmonton on Saturday. Mainly sunny and 17 for Calgary. Clearing and 21 is on tap for both Regina and Saskatoon. Showers and 20 degrees in Winnipeg. Toronto had a heat warning today. Tomorrow hot again with a high expected near 31. It'll be even hotter in Ottawa with a high near 32. A slight chance of showers and 32 as well for Montreal. In Atlantic Canada, expect light rain and 25 in both Fredericton, New Brunswick and Halifax, Nova Scotia. Light showers and 24 for Charlottetown, PEI. And in St. John's, Newfoundland, expect lots of clouds, rain, and a high of only 15 degrees on Saturday.
Today's weather is brought to you, rain or shine, by the Gym in the North. Top-notch equipment and customized classes in Lethbridge's North End.
The U.S. government is extending its ban on non-essential travel along the borders of Canada and Mexico. Officials say it's to slow the spread of COVID-19, and in particular, the Delta variant. The decision to extend the ban until at least September 21st comes after Canada opened its borders to non-essential visitors from the U.S. earlier this month. U.S. border communities that are dependent on shoppers from Canada and Mexico have also been calling on the Biden administration to lift the restriction. Stats Canada says retail sales were up in June by 4.2%, but says it will be a reversal in July once the numbers are added up. The federal agency says retail sales increased to $56.2 billion in June as pandemic restrictions were eased in many parts of the country. But its preliminary estimate indicates that sales dipped 1.7% last month. Some economists are saying while consumers have been enjoying a return to stores, July's sales will reflect a shift away from goods and services and toward services such as dining out, recreation, and travel. Canadian companies and federally regulated industries, including banks, telecoms, and airlines, are announcing mandatory COVID-19 vaccination policies a week after Ottawa requested the move. TD, Royal Bank, and CIBC have all announced that they will require employees working in their offices to be fully vaccinated by either October 31st or November 1st. Mandatory vaccination policies have also been announced by Sun Life, Shopify, the City of Toronto, and the Toronto Transit Commission, along with several healthcare facilities across Canada. The last time the Taliban was in power in Afghanistan, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube did not exist. Now the American social media companies are trying to figure out how to deal with a violent extremist group that is ruling a country of 40 million people. Even in exile, the Taliban maintained official social media accounts. Experts say the companies may soon face difficult decisions, such as whether they decide what is and what is not a legitimate government. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 123 points on the day to finish at 20,339. The Dow was up 225 points to 35,120. The S&P 500 was up 35 points to 4442, and the Nasdaq was up 172 points to 14,715. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down $1.37 to $62.32 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 2 cents to $3.85 US. Gold was up 73 cents to $17.8112 US an ounce, and silver was down 23 cents to $23.03 US an ounce. Wheat is at $415 per metric ton, barley's at $414, canola's at $865, and corn is at $438 per metric ton. Live cattle were up 88 cents to $124.28, feeder cattle were up 76 cents to $159.03, and lean hogs were up $1.70 to $88.63. The Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 78 cents US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, the U.S. has once again extended its restrictions on non-essential travel at land and ferry border crossings with Canada and Mexico, which were set to expire on Saturday. The northern and southern U.S. borders will remain closed to most travelers until at least September the 21st. The Department of Homeland Security says the measure is aimed at minimizing the spread of COVID-19, including the Delta variant. The Alberta municipal election is coming up on October the 18th. On deck, an interview with Lethbridge City Councillor Blaine Higgin, who's gunning for the mayor's chair. Find out where Mr. Higgin stands on a wide range of issues in just a moment. But first, here's a look what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Come and enjoy the Upside Downtown concert series, which features live musical performances by local artists taking place Thursdays from 5 to 7 p.m. until September 9th. At Cass's Rotary Square. It's a free concert set in our beautiful downtown where you can meet up with friends, listen to great music, and then head to dinner at one of our amazing restaurants. It's a great way to end your Thursday workday. This is an initiative from the Heart of the City Committee and Allied Arts Council of Lethbridge. For more information, visit artslethbridge.org. The Lethbridge Senior Citizens Organization is urgently looking for volunteers to take part in their Drive Happiness program. This program is to help seniors in our community who are facing extreme loneliness due to lack of accessible transportation. Volunteers will drive clients to their medical appointments, pick up groceries, and take them to important life activities. If you're interested in this opportunity and for more information, call 403-332-4320 or email volunteer@volunteerlethbridge.com. And that's your Bridge City News community calendar.
The race to become the mayor of Lethbridge is well underway, and today we're chatting with Blaine Higgin, who's a Lethbridge City Councillor who's hoping to become the new mayor of Lethbridge on October the 18th. Blaine, welcome back to Bridge City News.
Thank you, Hal, for having me.
Now, first of all, why don't you share a little bit with our viewers who Blaine Higgin really is and why you decided to run for mayor here in the Windy City?
Well, you know what? It's always been an interest of mine to serve the community, serve many different agencies that I've worked with over the years. And so service has, again, been top notch for me in my life. And so I just thought it's something that I would like to continue to give back to the community.
Now, one of your top priorities is to ensure that Lethbridge is a safe community for families. What do you see as being the biggest crime issues that really need to be reined in?
Oh boy, safety is, as we know, Hal, it's a huge issue here in Lethbridge. And I mean, I think one of the obvious answers to combat some of the safety concerns that we have in the community is the reinvestment in our Lethbridge police services that provide the resources that they obviously need to continue to serve our community and to keep that safe level to what everybody is expecting. And I think it's extremely important that we do have the policing that's necessary. And I'm sure you'll know that here a couple of years ago, or just last year, we talked about reducing the police budget. And then in the last CIP, I did not approve that. I did not raise my hand for that because I think it's important that we do have policing in our community, and a reduction just means a reduction of feet on the street and more concerns coming in. And so for that reason, I think policing is a top priority on my agenda going forward, and to be able to work with my colleagues to make sure that we have the adequate policing to cover the concerns that we have in our community.
Now, $1 million was recently taken out of the police budget. Would you consider putting that money back in?
Absolutely. That's one of my top priorities, is to work with my council colleagues to make sure that we can get that reinvested into our police service for sure.
Blaine, Lethbridge gained national attention over the last couple of years with the opioid crisis and the debate over the supervised consumption site, which is one of the busiest in all of Canada before it was shut down. Some residents want to see the return of another SCS in our city, while others prefer to see investment in recovery programs. How do you see things?
Well, ultimately, I guess it comes as an elected official. I'm accountable to the people. So perhaps, I guess, a number one issue I've heard at the doors when I've been out knocking, as well as from friends and colleagues and emails, etc., is issues related to the SES. We know the opioid crisis has been around for a while, and it's in most communities, but it's something that we can definitely reduce the strain on our police service as we provide the services that are needed to combat this incredible crisis that we have out there today. And people want and need the treatment and absolutely should receive it. Now, not everybody wants these treatment. We need to have those individuals that are experts in the field recommending the services that they need to be able to return to society and to recover from their illness, which is the addiction.
Now, a lot of times with the opioid crisis and drug addiction, you find a lot of homelessness issues here in the city. How would you actually work with the province to address the homeless issue here in Lethbridge?
Yes, it's extremely important that we understand that housing is a provincial mandate, and through the community here in Lethbridge, myself and my colleagues, we need to advocate on behalf of those individuals in our community to get the funding necessary. So if it's either provincial or sometimes there's federal funding as well that comes for that, it's extremely important that we have the relationships with both the provincial government and the federal government so that we can actually advocate on behalf of those individuals in our community. We do need more housing in the community. We know that. I sit on Lethbridge Housing Association Authority, and I've been there now for 8 years and over 5 years as the chair. And I see the importance of housing, but the shortage that we currently have. So we need to work with our provincial partners and the federal partners to make sure that we get the housing that's necessary in our community.
Now, Blaine, speaking of a shortage, let's talk about the shortage of doctors here in our city. So many have either left Lethbridge altogether or they're even leaving the province. How are we going to work with the province to retain and attract more doctors to the city of Lethbridge?
That's a huge issue here in Lethbridge, Hal, and so much so that it became one of my major campaign pillars, to be honest with you. I've started to create a special advisory committee that's comprised of several doctors and leading medical professionals and stakeholders in the community that are going to help me to develop a comprehensive plan for attracting and retaining doctors and other medical professionals here to the community. Now, we need to understand that this is a provincial, health is provincial, but that doesn't mean that we can't work together with those professionals here in our community. And I know there's one particular doctor I spoke with. He's recruited 12 doctors to the community. So although this is provincial, we can work with these doctors and as they continue to advocate for our community and bring in other doctors into the community. Because I know that my wife is in the medical field, and it's not just doctors. There's a lot of nurses that are leaving and a shortage of nurses. And she's a registered nurse here at the hospital, and we hear about it all the time. They're overworked. There's a shortage of nurses. And so again, it's everyone in the medical field that is they're getting burnt out. And I think that pandemic had a big part to play in that for sure.
Now let's talk a bit about the pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic caused a lot of division in our city, just as it has in many other major centers. If COVID-19 erupts again this fall and winter, how would you go about handling things here in the city? Will we bring back the mandatory face covering to be used in public buildings?
I've always said that my plans are to be informed by the experts. I'm not a doctor, and sitting around that table, there's no doctors that I'm aware of around council, that horseshoe. And so I think we need to rely on the experts on this. And so, of course, that would be Dr. Dina Hinshaw and her team. And we need to listen to their advice.
Blaine, there's always talk about how we need a third bridge here in our city, but of course, that's a pretty big budget item. What are your thoughts on how and when that will actually happen?
It's been a topic of conversation throughout many different elections, Hal. We know that. And it's something that is needed. We've heard that once the community gets to, that 30, 40,000 people on the west side, that it's going to be needed. And we're there now. Now, the concern, obviously, my concern has been in the past is this is a huge tax increase for the community. And it's something that I don't think that we could, I know that I would not support a huge tax increase that has been brought forward. But there's ways to think outside the box with that. If we work with our provincial and federal partners, I look out to Quebec and I was doing some research on how many different bridges that they're receiving. Where's our fair deal on this, right? And so both from a federal and provincial government level, we need to get that funding for our community. And there's also other opportunities. I've worked over the past couple of years with with some other options, which is thinking outside the box. And I'm going to have more to share on that, and a way that it won't be a tax burden for our community, but we'll be able to get this third bridge, and something that is drastically needed.
Now, as Lethbridge continues to grow, we have over 100,000 people here in our city, our transit service becomes even more important. The city of Lethbridge is changing over to its CityLink network. Apparently, the goal is to decrease ride time while offering adequate services for users in low ridership areas. Can you really explain to our viewers how that works?
Well, we're trying to get that the transportation. Anybody that wants to take transit, we want to get them to the point that they want to get to as quick or as relatively quick as a vehicle. Now, we know that's not going to happen. Transit is picking up different passengers along the route. So just to make it somewhat quicker for people to be able to take that mode of transit as opposed to their vehicle. Now, unfortunately, we know that Lethbridge has got quite the urban sprawl, and it's something that it is a car community. And I know we drive around, and I hear it all the time that the buses are empty. And, we don't know if we see them at the beginning of the route or at the end of the route, but we know that the buses are not full at all times, and rarely are they. And so looking at ways to become more efficient with the way that we do it, and we're doing some of that now, but we need to continually look at that, because transit is the number 3 burden on taxation right now, next to fire and police. And so we want to make sure we're always looking for efficiencies there. If it's smaller buses, if it's if the routes are better and quicker, so that people do want to take transit, those are some of the things we need to look at. And it's something that I sat on Canadian Urban Transit Association here for almost 8 years, and hearing some of the different efficiencies that people realize in other communities, I'd like to bring those here and share them with our administration. And I have over the time, and we have made some changes, but I think there's a lot more to be made. And the cost is just far too high, in my opinion, for transit in our community.
Now, most cities want to have a thriving downtown core, but the challenge with that is, how do we do this with the safety and crime concerns and ample parking at the same time? What's your plan to make the downtown core more attractive for businesses and consumers?
We talk continually about downtown, Hal, and something that I do want to mention, that it's downtown we want to thrive, but we also want other areas in our community to thrive. So I kind of put it as business in general throughout our community, because we do want to drive it downtown. But we have put in so much money into our downtown core, and it's not that I'm saying let's put good money after bad. There's been some great investment, but we need to attack the concerns that are limiting some of this. And I would say that is the crime and some of the vagrancy that happens in our downtown area. So if we don't address the root of this, we have been talking about revitalizing our downtown for as long as I can remember. And if we don't get to the root of the concern, which I believe, and a lot of others that have spoken to me believe, it's the crime and the vagrancy that is downtown. So if it's social concerns, etc., this is something we need to address prior. And I know I'm sorry for going a little bit off on this, but there's some frustration from a couple of business owners I talked to yesterday that aren't in the downtown. And they said, well, you're always talking about downtown area. What about other areas of the community? We have the same issues and concerns, and you keep dumping funding into downtown. So I did want to veer a little bit, I'm sorry on Hal, but it's addressing the main concern, and that's safety for those that want to shop downtown or shop anywhere else in our community. We need to make sure that they feel safe, and I think that's going to make a big change for sure. So again, the root of the concern needs to be addressed first.
Now, you've been a businessman for many years, Blaine. Any thoughts on what needs to happen to our city to really help stimulate the economy, to create a better business and employment environment?
My gosh, I can tell you this, it's been a real concern. And yes, I've been a business owner here for close to 30 years. And there was multiple times over the past year, I know myself and many others have sat down with our accountants and our penny pinchers and saying, do I need to continue doing this? Because I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it. There's been some different programs out there to help, but not enough to cover what losses have been there. So since Alberta is launched the Reopen for Summer, we've seen a prime example. I'll talk my own business is more in the first week of July. than the whole month of June I saw for sales. So whether it's just something people go, okay, we're open, let's get back to business. I don't know what it is, Hal, but it's uncommon over previous years for July, a quiet month for myself, a quieter month than June, to have that happen. So I think with the opening of the economy provincially has made a big change. And I think that there needs to be programs out there to help businesses. That unfortunately mainly comes from the federal government and through the provincial government as well, some of those different incentives and programs.
Blaine, there's been a little bit of controversy regarding funding to your campaign and maybe some money coming in from out of town. Did you want to address that?
Absolutely, Hal. I need to start off by saying any donations that I've received have been local. They've been in Lethbridge or family members or close friends that are close to Lethbridge. There is no funding, let me repeat, zero funding coming from the current government that is in power or any government for that matter. That, for one thing, PACs are you're not able to accept PAC funding anyways, and that is in the Municipal Government Act. And so in the Local Authorities Election Act, I have not received any funding outside of local donors or friends and family that may be just close to Lethbridge. But yes, there's zero funding coming from any other levels of government.
Blaine Higgin is one of the candidates in the Lethbridge mayoral race, and the municipal election is coming up on October the 18th. Blaine, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Hal. Appreciate it.
Today's interview is an incredible story of how God took these scattered pieces of a life of child abuse, poverty, human trafficking, and more, and somehow turned them into a life of joy and purpose. From Seattle, Washington, we are joined today by Christine Soul, a founder of Providence Heights, which is a nonprofit organization helping women and children in need. She is also the author of a book called Broken and Beautiful, which just came out in November. Welcome to Bridge City News, Christine. So great to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Christine, let's talk about your book. So this book was written out of your own difficult life experiences. Can you share maybe a brief overview of what your life was like growing up? I understand that your father was married 7 times, your mother was married 4 times, and that was pretty hard on you, and it was a little dysfunctional, right?
Yeah, a little bit of dysfunction. It's a great way to put it. So, yeah, my dad was married 7 times, 8 if you include my mom twice. My mom was married 4. And at about the age of 5 is when they got a divorce. And the way he did divorce is once he divorced the woman, he just didn't really speak to the kids again either. And so I didn't really have a relationship with him, some just a handful of times after that. And I was a latchkey kid. I let myself in and out of the house every morning. I got myself to school from kindergarten on, and did my meals. My mom is my hero, so she was absolutely incredible. But she worked 3 jobs, and she did the best that she could. And about the age of 10, I started doing drugs. And at 17, I got pregnant with my daughter, and 2 years later, at 19, I had identical twin boys. At that point, I was a meth addict. I was trafficked. I was abused. I was living a gay lifestyle, and I was filled with rage. And, you know, I fell to my knees at 21, and I cried out to God, and I said, if you are real, take my life, it's yours. And I so tangibly felt the power and presence of God that I threw all of the drugs and alcohol away. And where I should have had a heart attack for stopping meth the way that I did, I never even had a desire, temptation, or withdrawal. I was completely and totally set free. And now that set me on this journey of discovering who this Jesus is and really bouncing from house to house with my 3 babies, not knowing how I was going to survive. And, you know, at one point I found out all of my bills, and I just thought, wow, I can't even put a dent into any of this. Any job that I could get wouldn't even pay for my childcare. So I didn't know how I was going to survive. And I sat there and I thought, you know what? God really rescued me before. Maybe he can help me with this. And I wrote my $40 The last $40 that I owned, I wrote a check and I gave it to the one person that I knew that went to a Christian church. And he had no idea that was the last penny to provide for my babies. And, I wish I would have written down how God provided for me. But, I never even had a late payment. And that man that I gave that check to, I've been married to for 24 years now.
Wow.
So God provides.
Yeah, I would say so, like tenfold or more from the sounds of it. That's amazing. So it's interesting that you kind of got involved with somebody from a church. What was your view of God as a child and as a young woman during this terrible time? Because I understand you were also a victim of human trafficking and of abuse as well.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, my view of God, ironically, I always believed in God. Even in bars and drunk and being trafficked, I would tell people that they needed Jesus. I didn't know Jesus. I never had a relationship with Jesus. But, I do know that there were people that were praying for me.
That's all it takes sometimes, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that's amazing that you would just kind of throw everything down. It's like there was that urging, I guess,
Yeah.
What was it that finally turned your life around? Like, how did this happen? What was that light bulb moment that you knew he was there? And
Yeah. I think one of the big moments was just that I was in such a state of rage and despair. And honestly, if I didn't have my 3 babies, I don't know that I would be alive today. They were my hope, and I wanted something great for them. And there was a point in my life I'll share as a child when I was 15 years old. My sister ended up having an affair with my adopted dad. And I was the one who caught them, and I had to go and tell my mom. And it devastated her. And so she ended up taking me to a counselor. I got on antidepressant medication, and almost instantly I was preparing my suicide. And I was ready to commit to that. And I went for a walk, and I ran into this boy at my school, and he was just kind. And there was something in his words that gave me a reason to live. And as I walked away, he said, "Hey," he goes, I'll see you at school tomorrow." And I was like, "I will see you tomorrow." And I chose not to take those pills that I had planned. But I went and I sat in my school, and I thought, I don't even know what normal looks like. How do I act like a normal person when I can't even identify with that? And so I found myself running for this girl named Sherry, and I asked if I could stay in her home. And I stayed there for a week. And what I saw was love and compassion and joy. And in that moment, when I left, it looked like I hadn't really achieved anything, learned anything from them. But it was a little glimmer of hope that carried me through those hard times. And so when I fell to my knees, it was that moment that God brought me to, of really desiring to give that to my children. And I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I knew I was.
Yeah. In your book, you write about the importance of forgiveness. So who was it that you needed to forgive in your life? What brought you to that? And how do you do that in those kinds of circumstances? How do you get to that point?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think first and foremost, it's my father. A lot of brokenness there, and different fathers along the road. So that was great opportunities for forgiveness. But for the one that trafficked me, I think was the hard one for me. The others were pretty easy, but being trafficked was quite devastating. And the thing that I realized is that was a very broken man, and he is one that I still continue to pray for, want the best. And really just that he could find forgiveness, that he could learn to forgive himself for choices that he made. And I think it's one of the greatest things that holds us back from our destiny is unforgiveness.
I know that there are many viewers that are in maybe not exact similar situations as that exactly, but possibly people are suffering from abuse and addiction, and a lot of people have no hope. What advice would you give to them, Christine?
My advice would be to just trust in God. He will take, there's a scripture I love, it's Genesis 50:20, and people quote it all the time. And it's that the enemy, what the enemy has done for evil, God will turn for good. And I see a lot of people saying, well, God hasn't turned it for good for me. Well, keep reading. It says, for the saving of many lives. So really, I believe that if we take that pain that we've endured and we allow God to use that to set other people free, that's where we find victory. So share your story, share your testimony, because in the words that you have, the words that you share with others can speak such life that people don't have to experience that trauma. And then those things that you find were so traumatic in your own life are really empowering other people to live a life of freedom. And I find joy in that. And, if I had to go through everything that I experienced again, knowing what I know today, I would say sign me up, because I know it's setting people free.
Wow, what an inspiration. And speaking of inspiring, please briefly share what you are doing with your Providence Heights organization. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I went from a life of extreme poverty to having the opportunity to live a life of philanthropy and generosity. And about 3 years ago, God put on my heart to start a nonprofit organization. So it's called Providence Heights, and we are a residential entrepreneurial training program. And we house women and children in need. And really the focus is that, that number one, we are a sustainable organization, and that we teach women how to live sustainable lives. And so we start businesses. We just actually started in January. We got the keys to our building. And in March, we housed our first ladies. And in 6 weeks, they started a coffee business. It's called Providence Coffee. And it's ran through another nonprofit organization called Providence Collective. And so they built the website, they did the marketing, the labeling, all of the wording for the product. And they are breathtaking women who have a hope and a future. And I mean, we have women who are doing QuickBooks now and who are learning Adobe Illustrator, and they're talented and they're creative. And so that's our first product that has just come out. We've just launched as of like weeks ago. And so that's what we're doing. We work on really their identity in Christ. And so we do personality testing. We have life coaches, strength finders. And so that's who we are. And these women are beautiful. And our real focus is that we're preventative. Statistically, women have 72 hours on the streets before pimps and drug dealers get to them. And, so if you want to end trafficking, don't let them enter the streets. If you want to end foster care, don't let kids don't let women enter the streets. If you want to end homelessness, drug addiction, don't let women enter the streets. Help them before they end up in a place where they're so far down the road that we can't get them back.
Yeah. Who are these women that you're helping? Are these women who have been on the streets, who have been in abusive and drug addicted situations?
Yeah, our main focus is prevention. And so these are women who are they could be your neighbor, they could be a friend, someone in your church, family member that's just trying to keep their head above water. And right now with COVID, there are so many women who are they look great on the outside, and on the inside, they're like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And so that's the women that we're looking for, or women who have come out of like Union Gospel Mission or different programs who are ready to make those changes. We want women who are determined to change the trajectory of their lives.
Mm-hmm. Now, how can people help you in this?
Yeah, the greatest way that you could help, number one, is if you know of women who could use this help, we want to embrace them, their family. The other way that you could help is just through donation, or if you go to providence-collective.org, then you can buy our amazing coffee.
Okay. Oh, nice. Nice. And you were saying that you're actually sitting in one of the rooms that you have for your ladies, right? It's like a little bedroom suite. And it looks like a living room. It's very cozy and beautiful. So you help these women.
Yes, yes. And all of our furniture is donated from World Vision.
Oh, wow. And then my understanding too is your book, Broken and Beautiful, all the profits are going towards Providence Heights as well to help these women.
Yes,
okay.
That's correct.
That's amazing. Christine, you're such an inspiration, and bless you, and just keep doing what you're doing. Thanks so much for sharing your story with us today, Christine.
Oh, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Christine Soule is the author of Broken and Beautiful, available at www.christinesoule.com, and look them up also online at Providence Heights and Providence Collective too, right, Christine?
That's right.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being with us today. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.